Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Rising Stories. I'm your host, Corrine Sandifer, and I'm so glad you are joining me this week. I interview business owners and sometimes authors on the show. We talk about how they do life and run a business or write a novel. It's fun to peek inside their world, and I'm thrilled that you've decided to join me today. I also love it when I hear from listeners and they tell me what they like about the show. Like this listener who said, you feel like you're right there with them having a cup of coffee. Corrine puts people at ease and her questions allow her guests to be real. Thanks so much, Anna L. I really appreciate you leaving me a comment on iTunes. Today's guest is Retha Nichole. I heard Retha share her story on another podcast and knew right away that I wanted to hear more. I wanted to hear more about how she opened a bakery with 2 small children in tow. I must tell you that Retha and I dive in deep on this podcast about the recent events concerning the shootings in Minnesota, Louisiana, and Texas. I do have to apologize, though, because our connection was not the best on that day, but I did not want to stop our interview. So please pardon the in and out part of the interview. Here is my conversation with Retha. Well, thank you for coming on.
Oh, man, thanks for having me. I'm honored to be here.
Well, and you have your own podcast. So tell me about your podcast. Tell me what you do and who you are.
So I am Retha Nichole, mother of 3 boys, 10, 12, and 3. And I am a mom and I'm a coach. I have a couple of coaching clients right now that I'm working with. I speak about Jesus and how he can help you through anything. And so I speak at different conferences and churches. And I also have a podcast, like you said. So my podcast is called Journey to Balance, and it comes out pretty much every Thursday. This week, due to the events of last week, I released on Monday. But and the podcast is just about how life is a journey and we'll never be fully balanced. But I try to discuss 5 areas: self-care, family life, friend life, career life, and spiritual life, and how to maintain some sort of balance in one of those, and how when you are off balance in one of those, it kind of makes you feel a little wonky. And so we kind of talk through it and give practical tips of things we're learning on this journey of how to feel more balanced in those areas. And that's pretty much what I do.
I love that. I love that you, your description of your podcast was that you talk to women and ask them about their wisdom, the nuggets of wisdom, and they share with you on your podcast. Because and I've listened to a few, so I love hearing that, because I think that we learn from other people. We were just talking about e-courses before we hopped on, and just how we don't learn as much from e-courses, but we learn, just kind of connecting. And that's how I learn. I learn with connecting, like, one-on-one tutoring and learning from someone else. And just, and I love that you talk about community too. So tell me more about that, as far as, like, what's your definition of community?
I guess first offhand, my definition of community is people, right?
Mm-hmm.
People in connection. If we just like a elevator pitch, is people in connection. I think that in your community, wherever you live, you are rarely by yourself. Even if you're out in a farm by yourself, you go somewhere to get something, food, worship. Those are the people that are in your community. So those are the people that you should try to make connection with, build relationships with, because they're right there. So all of the things that surround your daily life really happen in your community, in your area. So you all should kind of have relationship together so that you can go through the good and the bad together, and then live in the middle. I think we spend most of our time in the middle. No one is on the high point forever. You're not in the
Right.
valley forever. And the most of your time is spent living in the middle. We're waiting to get to the mountaintop, or we're waiting to come out of the valley. But when we do, we spend most of our time in the middle. And so who's in the middle? Your community. So
Mm-hmm.
build a relationship there and spend time there. And your life will be so much richer because it's easier. I mean, it's just so easy to be in connection with your neighbor,
Mm-hmm.
with the people you see every day when you go to Walmart and when you go to Target. And so I just believe that that makes your life richer when you spend time in that way.
So the people in your community, I mean, so when you say people at Walmart or, the grocery store, whatever, so you actually start to you're engaging with these people when you, like the clerks and the people that you see there. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Like
That's
my
cool.
mom will say, how do you know these people? Like when we go, if she comes to visit and we're at the store and I say, oh my gosh, Miss Mary, how are you? And it doesn't take much to say, how are you?
Right.
And to listen. And
Mm-hmm.
maybe they tell you something and maybe you remember it the next time, or maybe you don't.
Yeah.
Or maybe you don't even remember their name, but hello, they got a name tag on, so there you go.
Yeah.
You know, but it doesn't take much to do that, and that builds relationship, and that helps you to feel connected. And
Mm.
most of the time that's what people want, right? Is to feel some sort of connection outside of their home.
Yeah, I think we all have that need and desire to feel that connection with the other person, and just that, I do the same thing at grocery stores. My husband's like, oh, did you know him? I'm like, well, not really, but he's got a name tag, so I called him by his name. I mean, how
Yeah.
simple is that? And then that does start a connection. The next time I see him, and he might, I might tell him my name, and then we connect, or even if he doesn't know my name, but I see him every week or whatever, and um, everybody has a need to feel important, and not
Yes.
being like kind of just in our peripheral. Because a lot of times there are so many people that are in our peripheral vision that we don't even, like, hey, yeah, I'll take a Coke with that, and da da da. And it's like, the fast food, line, and it's like these people are, I mean, they're just like us, and we need to connect with them. Everybody wants to connect, and
And you never know what that may do for them.
mm-hmm.
I mean, you just don't know.
Yeah,
You
true.
just don't know.
Yeah. So another reason I heard you on a podcast, on Jamie Ivy's podcast, and you talked about your story, and I want you to share a little bit with our listeners what happened to you as a newlywed, and how you worked through that, and where you are now since then.
Okay. So we'll do the abbreviated version
Yeah,
of the
yeah. It is a
story,
long
but
story, and yeah.
yeah, so we'll just do the abbreviated version. But so the first part is we were newly married, moving into our new home, that we had built. We moved in July 17th. Our first year anniversary was July 23rd. And then September 27th, he went into a coma. And he stayed in that state for 1 year, 9 months. I took care of him here at our home, instead of a facility, just a personal choice that I made that God told me to make.
Mm-hmm.
And in the midst of that coma, I was also pregnant. I was 5 months pregnant.
Mm-hmm.
So in the midst of coma, giving birth, and I have two other children, that taking care of them, I just really began to see God move in my life like never before.
Wow.
And then I say that, and I always think God is probably like, no, I was there before, you just weren't paying attention.
Right,
So
right.
he had my attention at this point.
Mm.
He definitely, totally had my attention, and he and I began to see him and hear him, totally in a way that I'd never seen him and heard him before, and I just surrendered. It was a time of surrender for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I surrendered everything to him, my whole life. And my husband was in a coma, so he couldn't talk. So I gave God his life and prayed the salvation prayer over him. And then he, after a year and 9 months, he passed. And so now where we are is we are still in our home. We are just so grateful that God allowed us to stay here,
Mm-hmm.
because at that time, I was a stay-at-home mom, so my husband was the breadwinner. So to the provision that we were able to see over these past 4 years has been amazing.
Wow.
And so where I am now is just in a totally different space. So career-wise, I was a realtor when I was in Atlanta for years. And then when we moved to Birmingham, I was a stay-at-home mom. And I bake just as hobby. That's
Mm-hmm.
what we do in my family. And mid-coma, God said that another provision would be for me to open a little small shop here in where we live. We live in a small town. And I look back and I don't know how I did that.
I don't
But
either.
I did.
I mean,
God,
like he was in your home, and were you the only caretaker, or did you have some help caring for him?
I was the only caretaker.
Wow.
His mother, um, I could call his mother. She doesn't drive, so that sometimes made it tougher.
Mm-hmm.
But for someone to bring her
Mm-hmm.
to my home, but his mother was here from time to time.
Okay.
So she would come and stay like 3 days, and
Wow.
then she would leave, and then if I needed her again, she'd come. So
Yeah.
um,
So you started, was it a brick and mortar little shop,
mhm.
bakery? Wow.
Yeah,
That's amazing.
uh, after the first year, my I began to reach out to community
Mm-hmm.
just on my street, nothing major. Just I would walk with the baby in the stroller just to breathe fresh air,
Mm-hmm.
and so I would put the cameras in my house directly on him and the IVs and all of that, so I could see, and I would just have it on my phone and watch it as I just walk up and down the street.
Mm-hmm.
So one of my neighbors had a hair salon in our little small town, and she said to me, just out of the blue one day, she said, there somebody moved out of one of the buildings near me. I wonder what they're going to put there. And so I said, oh man, I wonder if I should open a little bakery there, like just in conversation. And
Wow.
I said that. She sent me the guy's name and said, well, if you do, here's his thing. And she sent it via text. I called him and like keys the next day.
No way.
And then it just, it just rolled from there. And so that's what I'll say to people is that when God wants you to do something, most of us spend time in prayer, asking him how, and he'll make a way. I mean, he'll show you. Things will just fall in place of things that you need will just come out of nowhere. And that's really how that happened.
That's so
We
true.
live in a online community, so I was able to order everything online and just have it shipped directly to the store, and then either my nanny babysitter would come and I'd go there, or his mother would come and I would go there. And so
Wow.
I remember putting all hardwoods in we ended up with having a second location. And so in the first location, I put all hardwoods down with my three boys, just
Wow.
kind of moving around me. And so
Oh my
it
goodness.
just,
You mean you did it? You put in hardwood floors. Oh
yeah,
my
just
goodness.
the
The click and lock or
click
whatever.
and lock. And
Mm-hmm.
so it got all of that stuff seems so easy, when you're in Home Depot and the man is like, "Oh, it's really easy. It's just click and lock
Yeah.
and this." And no one tells you about the corners.
Oh no.
What do you do when you get to the corner? Or how do you get it under a piece of furniture, that doesn't move,
Right. Oh
it's
man. Yeah. So you
funny.
did just trial and
And
error. You just
painting,
did it.
like we painted stuff and I say we, my boys who were, um, let's see, I guess they're 12 and 10 now, so 7 and 9.
Little. Yeah. Do they have
Spray painting
memories?
light fixtures. It's crazy.
Do they
I
have
mean,
memories of that? Do they still talk about your bakery? Because you've since closed it, but do they still talk about how, remember when we had the bakery and, do they?
oh yeah, I mean, we live in a small town, so
Hmm.
it's the only bakery in town.
Okay.
So, um, yeah, I mean, we partnered, and anytime I say we, I'm just me and my kids.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
so I partnered with this elementary school that my boys go to, and
Uh-huh.
I would have what spirit night is what we called it. And so um, and so all of their friends would come, and everybody. Um, that's how we were able to become a part of the community, was through the bakery, because we were like hermits at first. I mean, we couldn't leave. I mean, we have a man in a coma in our house, so,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
that's not really a good way to meet people. Hi,
yeah,
been
yeah,
here for a year, so that's how we were known. And then slowly your story gets passed
yeah.
around. It's like, oh, do you know them? That, through
Wow.
different things. But yeah, so I don't know, to look back on that, I think, how did I do that? Like, why would,
Mm,
where, but we did it. And I would go in the mornings early, bake everything. And then I had, 2 to 3 high schoolers, that would work for me.
mm-hmm.
That either, Sarah she'd get out of high school at like 11 because she was a senior, stuff like that. So
Mm-hmm.
it just worked. It worked. I don't know how it worked, but it
Well,
worked.
so for businesses and for obviously you had the great, you had that grace to do it all.
Yeah.
And some people, don't understand that. And some people force things, like, oh, I can do this. But obviously it was hard. It's always hard work. I mean, work is work, and you've started a business and that's work. But obviously you had that grace to do the things that you needed to do and continue on. I mean, because not a lot of people can do that. Having someone who with I guess, chronic illness or in a coma and doing the things you do. And you had community, you had your mother-in-law, and you had people that could help as well. So that all that kind of worked together, it sounds like, to make it all happen. And so what now what tell me now, what are you doing? So you ended up closing the bakery, but how long was it open? Was it a
Hmm.
few years?
Yeah, we were open, I think, 2.5 years.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I asked, the bakery was God's idea. So,
Mm-hmm.
um, I asked him permission to close it. I love to bake. Today is, a lightweight day for me work wise, so I'll be baking today, just because I haven't in a while, and I love, the feeling I get by doing that. So it wasn't. I didn't ask him. I close it because I was tired of it. and it made money. It was never red. But I asked him to close it because it wasn't. I don't believe it was my life mission to own a small town bakery. So I believe that it was a place, a holding place for me. Right? There are things in your life that God wants you to go a certain place, but at a certain time. And so I believe he told me to open the bakery mid-coma because he knows everything. And so he knew how it would end. And he knew that if it ended before he finished the work that he was doing in me at that time, because everybody's a work in progress, but the work at that time, I would have gone home.
Yeah.
I'm not from here. I have no family here, no friends here. So I would have gone home. And for whatever reason, he has me away from home. It's a good reason. So he didn't want that. And that was to hold me because it was over as we did the second location. My husband passed. And so then I remember distinctly my mother saying, okay, now you guys will come home. And I was like, oh no, like I have a bakery.
We have a bakery, yeah.
A house. And like what just if I go home, what am I going home to? You know, we can't just leave this. And so I remember that. And then I remember the next year saying, okay, God, this isn't what you have for me. So I'd like to not do it. I love to bake, but I'd like to not do all this other stuff that I'm just not very interested in, managing these people. And it's not my passion. So is it okay? Like, I know now that I know your reasoning for having this. I get it. I'm not going anywhere. So
that's a good point. Yeah. Because there are seasons in our lives. And
yeah, well, sometimes people hold on to businesses and that's why I say it wasn't in the red, right? Because some people own businesses and say, well, I'm not losing money. It's still making money. But you know you're done. Like, you know that season should be over for you. And so that's when you really have to come against God's will and your will, right? Because you don't, I don't want to say that you're doing it for greed, but we all like money. And so it's not costing you anything.
Yeah. So you just kind of were in a season where you're like, okay, I've done this. I know I can do it. I've been successful at it, but this is not where I want to stay. Or God didn't, he was done with that part of you of moving through this journey, and then you were ready to kind of maybe do something else. So now you're a speaker, you're a conference speaker, and you coach and you speak and you do your podcast. And so did you, I needed to ask you, did you remarry? Have you remarried since then?
No.
You haven't? Oh, wow. Okay.
No. I hope to. I love love, and I think that, God knows me, and he knows that and he loves me. And so he knows that I desire that, I would like that. And so I think he'll do it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we were talking earlier, and you are kind of changing the subject here, but you and I talked about podcasting and the fact that, a lot of times we podcast and we record ahead of time, but the chain of events that happened recently, and you are my first recording since all that happened in Dallas, and I hate to say this, but I only read about Mr. Castile, his incident, and that was in Minnesota. Is that right?
Yes.
I did not read about the other man. the other situation, so I don't know enough to talk about it. But I just, yesterday, well, for the last week, and I've kind of been chatting with my girlfriends. We just feel so numb, and we're like, to me, it's like, oh my gosh, why can't we get over this hump? Why can't we get over this, stereotyping and being. Of course, I don't know all the details. I mean, there's always two sides to the story with, the cops.
Yeah, but let's just deal with the questions that you said. Like,
Yeah.
let's not even, like, let's not say, let's put the situations in a box and say, here are all the situations, right? All three of them.
Right.
Sterling, Castile, Dallas. Put them all three in a box. And then your question is, oh, this is so heartbreaking. Why can't we get over this? So why? And I think that the reason we can't is because we have bubble conversations. And we have bubble conversations, and then when it dies down, we go back to our life. I think that the only way is we have to understand both sides. The only way for you to understand both sides is to talk to people on either side.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that goes both ways. Blacks need to have deep, heartfelt conversations with whites, and whites need to have deep, heartfelt conversations with blacks.
Yeah.
Because there's no way to fully understand each side without thinking in the bubble, why can't we get past this? And so when you say that to people that look just like you, they say, I don't know. Well, you wouldn't know, right?
Right.
And when I say it to people that look like me, they're like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Same thing, right? And so to me, that's the answer to that question is you have to come outside of your own self and your own bubble and ask that question across the table to someone who doesn't look like you and gain some understanding of where they are. Now, some people will say, well, those are small conversations, but small impacts can end up making a larger impact with the continuation. When you have a snowball, you don't start with a great big ball, right? Start small, and as it rolls, it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And that's the hope I have, right? That's the prayer that I give to Christ is I say, God, I'd like a snowball movement. I'd like for more people to come outside of their bubble and have these small, intimate, trusting conversations that continue to roll and roll and roll, right? If you think about it on a different level and you think, let's talk this podcast. So when you first started, you had this guest on and this guest on, and people say it only takes one, right? Why does it only take one? It only takes one major guest to catapult you into podcast fame. Right? Same thing. It's the same thing for racial reconciliation. If you keep having these small conversations, and it could snowball into something major, but we give up so soon.
Yeah. And I think people are scared. I don't know I don't know what they're scared about because it's just a conversation, like you're saying. However, I myself have not called, my friends who, don't look like me. And I know they're hurting, but I haven't made that call, and I need to. Part of me is like, well, is that going to offend them by me calling them?
Are they your friend?
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah,
then.
We're friends.
There you go.
I mean, we've had conversations about race before, which is great. But it's like, I don't want her to go, well, why are you just calling me now? like, but we're friends. I mean, we've talked and
So let's say she says that. Then
yeah.
you just speak honesty right back.
Mm-hmm.
I think what happens is, and listen, to your listeners and to you, I am not the answer to all blacks, and I do not have the answer to everything. But what I do believe is that if we operate in love and if we are honest with those people in our life, then God will overtake all of that you're feeling. Right?
Yes, right.
What I mean by that is, if you, real life. Mm-hmm. So at church on Sunday in my small group, my mentor is in my small group. She's actually the teacher of our class. Mm-hmm. And so we go around and give our prayer requests. And so I'm the only black in my class. And I bring up having that conversation with my sons and how tough it was. And we've had it before. It gets tougher every time, on and on. After church, like 2 hours later, she calls me and she says, I'm calling you to totally apologize. I did not even, I watched all of that happen and never even thought all the things that you said in class today. I never even thought those things. I didn't. Mm-hmm. And so why didn't she? Because she operates in a bubble and we are very close, but she just doesn't operate she's not racist. So it didn't even click to her.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
She was operating in total love. So I gave her that love back and I said, oh my gosh, it's okay.
Yeah.
You're calling me now, so it's okay.
Yeah.
And that's it. So then we moved on, had the conversation. I was able to share with her totally how that feels for me, mm-hmm. how it felt that day. I have 3 boys. That's tough. Mm-hmm. I have a dad and uncles. And so being able to express to her even my own, if I ever encounter police, how that feels for me. And that's it, right? Mm-hmm. Educating her educating me, us both taking time to listen to each other. That's how you build the snowball, when you keep having that to happen.
Yeah, and I think, the more we talk about it, like you were saying, and building that little snowball and making it bigger, is the more to me, I work on like end results. So what's the end result? I mean, for me, my small conversation with somebody, and even with someone who does look like me, which I'm Hispanic, so there's not a lot of people in my group group of friends that look like me. But if I talk to someone who's Caucasian, and I may mention that I talked with my friends about what they're going through and how they're feeling, just like your friend talked to you. And that might change maybe a perception that they've had. So like, don't negate just, that one conversation, like you said, does kind of snowball, because you may have more conversations from that, and maybe change someone else's, mind about race and what it looks like, and what or racial prejudices and stereotypes and what that looks like to the rest of the world. I mean, it does snowball, and just having those small conversations. So I think that's very important. That was good. I mean, thanks for working that through, working that with me, because I was questioning, like, I felt numb and I felt helpless. Like, what do I do? What can I do? But having conversations they help. Yeah.
We have to also stop always being focused on the harvest, right? And by that, I mean, we have to always, we live in such a microwave, quick society. Things just at the tip, snap your fingers. Now you can get groceries delivered to you. And if you live in a major city, Amazon will come within an hour, And so because of that mentality, we want everything to end right when it starts. Like, I don't like that. I want it to be over. And so that's like harvest. But sometimes you got to plant the seed and move on.
Yeah.
And so those conversations, having them with Christ involved, allows you to plant the seed. And so what you were saying, when you have that conversation, when you leave that conversation, you should pray, God, I hope that the seed that I just planted, that you will water it, nurture it, and love it. And if I never get to see the harvest of that, I know that you took it over. We have to stop always wanting to, and it's not for, I'm not saying that we want the gratification of it, but we just kind of want, it's not fun. Racism is not fun. So we just kind of want it to be over.
Right.
And there's nothing wrong with planting the seed. Just plant
Having
the seed
those conversations
and ask God to water it. That you will. You know, I said before that even conversations with my kids, like, I'm just like, my 12-year-old, I had to have the sex conversation with him. I'm not married, people, so I had to have that sex conversation. I was like, hey, God, look, I just planted this seed. You got to do the rest. I don't even know. I don't even know if I put dirt back over that seed. You got to go in there and help that out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you have to be okay with planting the seed, and that's having that small, intimate, trusting conversation and go from there.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's good advice. Yeah. Good luck on that sex talk with your son. I'm sure it's
again, for sure, because
you'll have to revisit
I blew that. It was horrible.
Oh no. That's for another podcast. We'll have to talk about that later. Oh gosh. Well, so what advice would you give someone who maybe wants to start a bakery or start a new business, and they're in the midst of maybe just life. I mean, everybody has stuff going on. I mean, you had something major, but with your husband. But what advice would you give someone that wants to start a business like that?
I think the best advice I could give anyone is the advice that my best friend gave to me, and she said, "Don't be afraid to take the stairs."
Yeah.
Again, goes back to that we want it now society, and we want it to be the best thing ever. But everything in life, I mean, you tell me one thing that doesn't need some nurturing and some watering and some time.
And wisdom. Yeah.
Yeah. And when you go at the snail's pace as opposed to the rabbit, you learn so much more.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think in business, what I've seen, even for myself, is that going slower allows you to learn as you go. It allows you to make mistakes and rebound better from them. And I would suggest to anybody what my best friend suggested to me is to don't be afraid of the stairs. Take the stairs. As good as that escalator and elevator look, and they got it all shined up and, it looks so pretty and it's faster, it's just not worth it. You learn so much more along the way by doing it slow. And then the second advice that I'll give to anyone in business is look to someone who's doing what you're doing well and ask them.
Yeah.
Ask them out, for lunch. And here's what I'll say. When you ask them out for lunch or coffee, know that they are doing what you want to do better. So value their time. Look crazy and have a question written out.
That's good.
Don't be flying by the seat of your pants. Like, think that night before you go, what do I really want to know? What are they doing that I really want to know? How did you do that? And have those questions written out. Value their time. Value your own time and do it right. But I think that that's really good. I think a lot of times we are intimidated by someone who's, steps ahead of us or light years ahead of us. And they started small, just like you did. I mean,
Yeah. And
so
and you're
ask them.
you're right. Yeah, people think that they're going to be like, just intimidating and not wanting to help, but they, I guess because of, you're doing the same thing they're doing, but people are, for the most part, people are very giving and loving and
It's
will
all about your
help.
motives.
Mm-hmm.
People people know, it's your motive. If your
Mm-hmm.
motive is wrong, then God's not going to let that situation happen. He's not going to let you, ask that person for assistance to get against them. This is not going to happen. But if you, have good motives and you're totally wanting to learn and grow and not maybe make as many mistakes, then people honor that and they are very humbled by what you see in them. And it's a growing moment for both parties. It's a win for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
And so those are my two best things that I live by. And I ask people who are doing it better or that I think are doing a great job. When I started the podcast, I knew nothing about podcasting. And so I began to listen to them and I thought, oh my gosh, this lady is really rocking it out. And so I sent Jamie Ivey an email and I said, hey, you're doing an awesome job. And I like your interview style. And there's some technical stuff that I don't understand. But then I also want to understand some just podcasting things.
Mm-hmm.
And she was very gracious with that.
That's great.
And so I think that, seek that out. Do your research and seek out who is doing it right. And they'll be gracious to provide you with some assistance.
That's good advice. Yeah. Awesome. So, couple of questions. So, number one, what are you going to be baking today? What do you like to bake?
I like cakes. Any kind of cake I really like. So I really have been wanting this Boston cream cupcake that I make.
Oh, yum. That sounds
delicious. Really
good.
So I'm thinking that one. I think that one. But then I've kind of been wanting cheesecake too. So my neighbors should just get ready. I probably will do both.
So you'll take some over to her, to your neighbor?
I just, I live on a magical street. Let me just tell you.
Oh,
so it's
tell me
pretty
about
nice. We, everybody on this street, it's a good kid-friendly street, and we all have a group text.
Nice.
So like, it's magical because do you need an egg? Or, oh my gosh, I just ran out of soy sauce, and you put it on the group text, and somebody's child will bring it down to your door or will run and meet in the middle. So it's pretty magical. So yeah, if I bake today and bake both of those things, that's a lot for just me, and my kids are at Nana camp. So I'll just put it on the group text and say, hey, I baked today. Here's what I baked. And then people will just come down and get what they want. But see, that's another community because some will come down and eat a slice right there or, take some back and we'll chat. And so it's nice.
That is really nice. That is such a blessing. I hope you know what a blessing that is.
What? You think I don't know? I had
live in community
like coma patient in my house for a year and 9 months. And so that was in here and no one knew. So when I came out, this is I tell people all the time, this is my reward. God gave me this great place, this great street.
Oh, awesome. Okay, so what are you reading these days? Are you a reader? Do you like to read stuff?
I'm not reading anything right now because we are going on vacation.
Oh.
So.
Are you taking a book?
I am. So I will finish Wild and Free by Jess Conley and Haley Morgan. Mm-hmm. I started reading that and got so into it. And, it's like, I do have kids I need to take care of. So, so I put a pause on that. So I'm taking that. And then my church is going to, when we come back from vacation, going to do Praying the Bible by Donald S. Whitney.
I've not heard
Oh,
that. Praying the Bible?
yeah. So I am, so I'm taking that.
Okay, okay.
So I'm taking Wild and Free and Praying the Bible. And yeah, I think those are the only two that I'm taking.
That'll be a fun vacation, just sitting around. I love just sitting around and reading. It's my favorite thing to do. So, what is rocking your world? What else are you doing that you're or found that you love, or something that you're texting your group text friends about?
Okay, does it have to be, it can be anything?
It can be anything.
Okay, so ladies, let me just tell y'all. And I am showing her, but I'm telling you all, I am loving, this is so
Oh,
crazy
I
and
can't wait.
superficial, but this Chanel mascara, I'll send you a picture. It is thebomb.com, people.
Really? Chanel?
And they
Okay,
sell
mascara.
it at Nordstrom. So it says Le Volume de Chanel Mascara 10 Noir Black. And
Mm-hmm.
so I love it. Now, I'll tell you this too. I hope that I can find it in blue because my mother, I don't know why, but my mother says never buy black mascara. So we buy blue. Um, and it's still pretty dark. Like this one is blue.
Yeah. Like a
It's, but it's so, it colors, it's still dark on your,
on your
but it's
lashes,
not
yeah.
as dark. You know what I mean? Like
Mm-hmm.
it's definitely not blue. People don't,
It's
don't
not
go
like
about
it's not
crazy.
like Hue Stick, blue. Like it's not
No,
like a.
it's navy.
It's navy,
So it's
yeah.
just not as dark. Anyway, I love it. So I hope that Chanel one comes in blue. But if it doesn't, I'm probably still going to get it because it
Yeah.
is
So
wonderful.
what do you like about it? Is it just it doesn't clump, or does it like go on
It
smoothly?
does not clump at all. It goes on, and mascara really is all about the brush. I'm learning. I'm not a makeup person, so my
Mm-hmm.
mother's still walking me through it. But it's all about the brush. If it clumps on the brush, it's going to clump on your eyes.
Yeah.
So that brush is really good. The volume that you get is really good. So I'm loving that mascara.
That is cool. I'm gonna have
And
to
I
get
got it
some.
just on an off chance. There's a Nordstrom has personal shoppers, and my mom has one, and
Mm-hmm.
so she sent me this goodie
Like a good
basket,
bag.
whatever,
Mm-hmm.
and so it was in there.
Oh wow. Nice. Nice.
So wonderful.
What else are you
So
like?
it's great. So the other thing I'm loving, and I don't know how to pronounce it, so I'm going to show it to you, and I'll send you a picture too, is this candle. Let's see,
Oh, Velusa something. And what is it like?
Persimmon. So it says, let's see, it says, considered to be the finest gourmet variety, is layered with peach and red currant,
Mm,
Japanese, that S word, persimmon. Oh,
that's
it is wonderful.
that looks
If you
really
like
good.
candles, it's
I
really good. And I
do.
love candles.
I love candles.
So I'm loving that.
I try to, one of the things I do, and I think a lot of people do this, I've heard people that work from home, they'll light a candle, when it's time to work.
Me too. That's what
And
I
then
do.
every time you smell that smell, you're like, it just does kind of put you in the mood, like, okay,
It
like more
just
like a
totally
productive
changes
mood.
my posture of let's get it done.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then
So
you just keep
I'm
it for
in
that.
my office, which
Mm-hmm.
is in my closet.
Oh, it
They
looks,
can't see
it's
it, but
great.
you can see
Yeah,
it.
it looks
So
great.
I have a desk right here, and then the windows right in front of me.
Uh-huh.
And then, like, what you can see back there, that's my vision board. See, because I'll see it every day. I'm a
Yeah.
vision person.
Uh-huh.
And then there is my big calendar. So that's where, I write everything down. And so the kids will know to look there.
Yeah.
Like, if they're like, what are we doing?
So, Retha, if you have a window in that room, I think technically it's not a closet. Just saying.
Really? It is. It's a closet.
I mean, my closet doesn't have a window. I think technically it's not a closet if you don't have clothes in there.
Look, I do. Look.
Okay, you do have some clothes in there, but I think it's not a
On
closet.
each side,
It can
ma'am.
be considered a home office if it has a window. I don't know.
Wow.
My closet does not have a window.
Oh, you saw the clothes. They're on each side,
Yeah.
clothes. But it's great. It's great. It's so therapeutic for me. When the coma first happened, this is where I lost it all and fell to my knees in this closet. And I felt such a sense of comfort. I mean, if you can feel comfort on your knees crying so hard, but I did. And so as I began to see God work and felt the comfort of him, I thought, this is where I always want to be. And so I put a desk in here and my calendar, my board, and so we're in here.
You're rocking. That's it. Right. That's great. So maybe is that your third thing? Your closet? Doing your desk.
I love my closet.
You're enjoying your office.
And no one even calls it my closet anymore. The kids, last night I was in here and I FaceTimed the boys, and my 3-year-old said, "You're in your office."
Aww. I can't believe you have a 3-year-old. That's like, so 3, 12, and 10. That's,
3, 12, and 10. All boys.
All boys. So, yeah. I still have one boy at home. So he's...
Oh, you do?
Yeah. He's 15 now. Yeah.
Okay.
So, and my daughter just recently married, so she's off. And, yeah. Boys are great, but they
are. Boys are great. I always wanted a girl. Every single ultrasound, I just knew it was a girl. I always wanted a girl, but boys are great. The only reason I always wanted a girl is I'm extremely close to my mom, and so I wanted that because boys, they leave you. They go and get their wife, and they're gone. And girls, they leave you, but they still are your friend, and you can still have lunch and stuff like that.
Yes.
So I'm praying for good daughter-in-laws right now.
Mm-hmm. Well, and you just never know what the dynamics of that one daughter-in-law, or the daughter-in-laws are. She may, live in town, and y'all may get really close, and so you never know.
Praying for it right now.
Well, thank you so much for coming on, and y'all all need to listen to Retha's. I'll put a link and everything, all the show notes about you and your upcoming events and speaking events, and also where they can find your podcast. So thanks so much for
thank you. I'm honored that you asked me, and I hope that your listeners gained at least one nugget that will enhance their life. I thank you so much.
Wasn't she amazing? I learned so much from speaking with her today, and it is our hope that you will start the conversation within your circle of friends or community to begin the healing after these events. Remember that you can find me on Twitter, Facebook, Snapchat, and my favorite, which is Instagram, under Corinne Sandifer. You can get all of today's show notes and information by going to CorinneSandifer.com and finding Rising Stories Podcast. There you will find all of the links and find out how to connect with Retha Nichole. Thanks so much for listening, and have a great day.